Nurturing your well-being. So, as someone who has a calling, as someone who is purpose driven, how do you nurture your well-being? Because sometimes when some people think about self-care, some people think, oh, that is being, so selfish. You're supposed to give, you're supposed to be of servant, of service as a servant. But if you are always if like this, if you don't have any input, then you might as well lay your head down. So. The month of May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and one of the things that I want to start off by saying, when it comes to your mental health, it is about your well-being, your overall well-being. Everything is connected. But let's say it's about your mental well-being. And that is so important. And I'll get into it later. But I've come across this definition. I believe that it says it so, and it's very simple. I'm gonna say it like that. I'm going to read it because I want to make sure that you are listening to me, okay? And this is from the Institute of Mental Health in the UK. And I just really feel like they just have a really good definition of mental health and mental illness. Because a lot of times, what people, when they think of mental health, they think it equates to mental illness, and that's not true, you know? And one of the reasons that I really want to highlight, because as an entrepreneur, as someone who has a calling, as someone who is purpose driven, if you are not nurturing your well being, taking care of yourself, in that you will run yourself to the ground. And what's the use of you doing everything that you're doing if you don't have the capacity, you don't have the energy, and you're not well? Okay. So when it comes to mental health, according to the Institute of Mental Health, is that it is your general state of well-being. Your general state of well-being. You can relate to that, right? There's no shame or no stigma when it comes to your general state of well-being. So that means when it comes to self-care, it's the things that you're doing for your general state of your well-being. And it's also your state of mind. The thoughts that you're having, what is your state of mind, all of that. And your well being and your state of mind is something to look after. Now, when it comes to mental illness, even though I know this, but I want to read it because I wanted a simplified explanation or definition. And again, I really feel like that these two come in its simplest form for everyone can understand and relate to. So when it comes to mental illness, something that disrupts your mental state and interrupts how you feel, think, communicate, and behave. You heard that. So, as a therapist, I deal with both of those. Pretty much my main quote unquote job as a therapist, how shall I start saying, licensed clinical social worker. Anyway, as someone who is specialized in this, who's been in the business, who's been in the field for over 2 decades, in that when I'm working with individuals in the private sector, in institutions, and things like that, depends on where I'm working, I may not always be dealing with a mental illness, but I would say I will be dealing with certain things that interferes or disrupt their mental state. So when it comes to self-care are the things that you do to either be proactive, to prevent, or even to help stop when those interruptions happen. So the easiest way that you can kind of think about when it comes to you when it comes to your general state of well-being and your state of mind is the things that you do every day. You hear me talk about self-care as an entrepreneur, self-care as someone with a calling, self-care as someone who is purpose-driven. Because of the pressure just in being in that role alone, that can lead to disruptions and interruptions in your state of mind. It can definitely lead to that. And we don't want that to happen. So, on a simple way, on the basic way of how you can take care of yourself are the things that you're doing every day. Because if you do not stop, pause, take time to nurture your well-being, to take care of yourself, you will run yourself into the ground. Then it leads to, don't get me wrong, there are, like when it comes to anxiety and depression, I would mention those two. Anything else in that category, definitely someone needs to see a licensed clinical social worker. I'm saying a licensed clinical social worker, but a licensed therapist. I'm going to say that. When I'm on here on social media, in that when it comes to my business, I'm more on the mental health side of it, more so on the mental health side of it, of helping you to maintain your well-being, to help you to maintain and nurture your state of mind. And these are the things that you can do on a daily basis. Now, for those of you who are entrepreneurs, those of you who have a calling, those of you who are purpose-driven, some of you are like, what's she talking about? That got nothing to do with me. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. It has everything to do with you and how you run your business, of how you show up. Because when you are so focused on, giving away all your gifts and not, using your gifts on yourself, then you're leaving yourself behind. You can create some leaks. Again, I'm not talking about like the clinical side of depression and anxiety, because when it comes to like a spectrum of anxiety or depression, we're all somewhere on that spectrum at some point in our lives. We all are. When it comes to the depression, it may be sadness and mild depression and up until clinical depression. And then when it comes to the anxiety, we may, be anxious, or have some anxiousness and some anxiety, and it goes into, generalized anxiety, and then sometimes can go into phobia, and then full-blown panic attacks. And so what I'm saying is that one of the ways that you can help nurture your well-being, because it is so important, because of the fact, even though other things can happen, I always like to put that caveat out there, because sometimes people can be doing the right thing of taking care of themselves and still end up, with certain medical conditions, with certain things, when it comes to their mental health. All of those things can still happen. But what I'm saying is, give yourself a fighting chance. And at least on a daily basis, to really help, so that the stressors that come into your life, they won't be compounded. At least you could say, okay, I am nurturing my well-being, I'm taking care of myself, so that you won't have stack of stressors that's on you. So I want to make sure that I kind of get through some of these things. Now, when it comes to you making sure that you are looking after your well-being, that comes into your practice, that comes into your rituals, that come into your routines. What are the things that you are doing daily? And if anything that I have learned from my own lived experience and by being a licensed clinical social worker, what I've learned and by seeing people in various settings, I've learned generally we're not proactive and we're not preventative enough. And it really, I want to say, it really comes down to, which is true, the standard of being healthy, along with that, going back to basic. I was thinking about this earlier today. And actually, I thought about it a few years ago when I even came to the conclusion, once I realized, like, oh, we're not even teaching people how to be well. And y'all, being well, the work that it takes to be well, you know, that is some work. I don't really like to say things are hard and things like that, but I would say it takes a lot of effort. Sometimes it's not easy. You know how you hear people say, choose your hard when it comes to your well being. Sometimes that's so. Again, I'm not talking about the clinical diagnosis of things, but I'm talking about even when it comes to panic attacks, what are some things that you can do on a daily basis to help prevent that? Granted, some people may have it anyway. But like I said, a lot of times what I've seen is that we don't do enough of the everyday thing. One thing that I tell people, kind of two things now. Ooh, the P and the P, they go hand in hand together. It amazes me of the downloads that end up happening when I'm live. But two things that I tell people. The second one I've recently started telling people, but one of the ones I've been telling people for a long time, in that the number one thing, I'm gonna say my top two things that I tell people when it comes to, their wellness of being well and helping them, work through so many different things, is to pause, is to sit still, is to breathe. Because you want to be able to, if you have intrusive thoughts, if you have a memory, if you are triggered, you want it to be able to create a gap. Because sometimes what ends up happening is that thought, that memory comes up. And again, I'm not talking about, I'll say this, you get to decide of whether or not if therapy is needed. But I know at the basic level, therapy or not, as an everyday thing, pausing is important because it helps you to have the emotional capacity to deal with, certain situations, and just so that it won't be so overwhelming, to you. And so pausing is so important. Take that deep breath and pause. This can come when you are negotiating, a deal, when you are, telling someone about your business, about your message. When you come on live, you can pause. If you're, having a decision, if you're having to make a decision, sometimes you may need to pause. Whatever that is for you. The other thing is to write down your principles. Those are the two. So the two P's. I need to add something else to that. I like to do things in three when it comes to this. So write down your principles and to pause, because sometimes you may need to pause to figure out if someone or if people, places, or things are not in alignment, are violating, or not honoring your principles. So that's where the pause come in, because sometimes it could be you. Yeah, it could be you who is not pausing to see if you are even honoring your own principle because you're busy trying to either convince others or it's like, hey, I'm the one, whether it's some type of validation. I wouldn't really say it's really attention, but most of the time it's some type of confirmation and validation. Some of that is human stuff, but we need to work through that so that you can really get your message out, so that you can stay connected with your calling. So, how are you taking care of your well being? Because when it comes to mental health, it sometimes it is the smaller things. That is what I've learned through my clinical experience. That's what I learned through my lived experience, is that a lot of times we're not taking the time to do the smaller things, so that when you need, the more that you put in practices in breathing and pausing, is it going to stop, something bad from happening when it comes to other people? No, it may not, but it can help in how you may be able to see clearly, hey, something is coming down the pipe. I don't know what this is, but I'm going to trust myself. That where you, when it comes to your gut, when it comes to your intuition, that you are able to really pay attention to that, not just in your personal life, but also in your business. When you know that something isn't right, when you know that you may need to have a talk with somebody on your team or someone that you collaborate with, someone where there's a partnership, where you may need to have a discussion with someone, you may need a fire. That never feels good, or you may need to write someone up. That never feels good, but it may be something that needs to happen, because when it comes to your principles, when it comes to your values, they're not in alignment. They're not in alignment when it comes to, policies and procedures and the mission and the values that you have for your business. But if you are always putting out fires, trying to please people, and you're not following your own principle because you're not pausing to allow that negative, the full expression of the emotion to really come through. And so, one thing to remember too is that when it comes to your mental health, when it comes to your well being, it isn't just something that you check on or check in when something is wrong. It's something that you check into yourself every single day. You check in with your business, but you check in with yourself too. And so, how do you take care of your well being? How do you, because we hear about mindset, in which that is very important, and that is one way that you can do that. But do you really know what that means? Do you know how to really unpack that? For some individuals, when it comes to certain mindset, sometimes some individuals may benefit from therapy, and from others it could be a life coach, and others it can be a therapy group. For others it can be in a share circle. Man, I remember the first time that I had stepped into a share circle, because pretty much it's like I knew that I wanted to do certain things, and I always feel like, hey, I need to have the experience too to see what it's like from the participant side. And this one was on grief, in which that is a subject that is pretty dear to me. And I stepped into this share circle, and I am like, wow, what is this? What is this? And it just felt so good, because it is different from a therapy group. It's not a support group, and it's different from a therapy group. And depends on where people are in their own lives. Some people need individual therapy, and some people need group therapy. But for the rest of the world, we all can be, it can be very therapeutic to have some type of supportive group, some type of share circle, being in community, because we are hardwired for connection. But the connection is for us, for how we can connect with ourselves. And that's another conversation. The other thing to remember too, when it comes to your well-being, when it comes to your mental health, there are so many factors, there's so many dynamics, there's so many things that influence it, that impacts it. It can be experiences, your environment, trauma, stress, and your internal dialogue. What are the things that you are saying to yourself? What is your self-talk? What is that all about? That plays a big role into your well-being. And that is where that pause come in. Do something to pause that self-talk. Check in on it. Sometimes it can be positive and sometimes not. And so, because you know there are many things that can influence, that can impact your well-being, your mind. And then the thing is, a lot of times we don't even have control over it because sometimes it's coming from the outside. So this is why it's so important to have practices, to develop rhythm, to develop momentum of the things that you can do to protect your well-being, to protect you. Because, ooh, this is good. Because if anything, what you don't want to do, you don't want to be so stronghold of being a servant, of being a service to others that you neglect yourself. Or even while you're doing it, that you're causing harm to yourself mentally because it's out of alignment. It's causing you distress. And so with the things that you do, that is self-care. Pausing is self-care. Being intentional of who you let around you is self-care. It's not just a good feeling type of thing, even though we all want that. You know what I'm saying? We all want that. But it's not just a good feeling type of thing. It's so that you can be well. It's more about you nurturing your well-being, especially your nervous system. You're reconditioning your nervous system. And reconditioning is pretty much coming from the old software that you've been conditioned to believe, think, act, to react, the triggers that you may have. And that's where pausing can help you to not react in that way. And again, for some individuals may benefit from some therapy, and for others, it's doing the things that need to be done so that you can be well. And then in training your nervous system. Now, one of the things that I do teach, I share a framework when it comes to pretty much like something that you can use every day. I really encourage people to use it throughout the day. It's to take 5 to Thrive Today wellness boosters. Again, you don't have to be using this, because you are drained, but it's something that you can go to. The more that you practice, you have a practice, you have a ritual, it's going to help your well-being. It's like you are the mothership. So what are you doing to nurture that? mothership? What are you doing to when it comes to resilience? Resilience isn't just a thing when you're in, you know, the thing, when you're in the war. It's the thing that you do actually before you get there. And so with the Take 5 to Thrive Today wellness boosters, is to breathe deeply. If you're able to do 5 minutes of just breathing sometime throughout the day, I would say, if you got, a 9 to 5, sometimes with some 9 to 5, you have that 15-minute break. If you can take 5 minutes, if you're able to take that on most days, that's really good. I really encourage that. And definitely take your lunch break. That's a form of self-care that helps you with your mental health, with your wellness, with your well-being. But sometimes, even though we may be hardwired for connection, and it's another conversation, I don't think it's the way that you think that most people define it. But sometimes we need to really take that mental break just to be able to recalibrate, to reset. You want to be able to do that. And so with uh, deep breathing, it helps calm your system. The other thing is to move with intention. That can be, you know, pretty much that can be walking, that can be doing some jumping jacks, that can be dancing, it can be yoga, some type of movement is really important. And that pretty much helps to release and reduce tension. And then just take notice of your surrounding and in a good way. It's like right now, oh man, y'all. Oh, let me see if I can do this. I feel like that this is a beautiful sight. For those of you who are on, let me see. Oh, wait a minute. I'm about to press the wrong thing. Oh, I may not be able to do it since I'm here. I guess I don't know how to do it. I'm gonna have to look at it. Let's see. I was trying to turn the camera around. But anyway, I'll do it a little later on. Oh, but this is a beautiful sight that I see right now. I'm sitting at my desk and looking at the window, and the rain is coming down, and the tree that's in front of my yard is just blooming. And then we have the shrubs, and I hear the rain coming down. And so taking notice is just to take notice of that, and to really feel the blessing of to be able to sit in my office and enjoy the sound of the rain and to be able to see. Oh man, I gotta make sure I take a picture of that. So y'all, I'm gonna be heading out. And the other thing is to be in this present moment, to take notice, to be in this present moment, to be you, to just to be able to. And I know that sometimes you can be having so much going on in your life. And like I said, I have some lived experience where there have been stressful times in my life. And even though a lot of times I would use sleep as a getaway, but one thing I've learned too, that it's important to be able to incorporate some things before sleep and after sleep. And so that is my signature ritual, is to take 5 to thrive today. And the thing is, what the main purpose of all of this, y'all, is just so that without intentional self-care, stress builds up, your emotions go unmanaged, mental health, your mental overwhelm increases, and there's a disconnect from yourself of what's happening. And with intentional self-care, you're able to regulate, think clearly, respond instead of react, and sustain your life and work. And mental health, isn't just maintained by accident, it's by maintaining a practice. And I know, like in therapy, in helping individuals, and I would ask, were they able to do this? Were they able to practice? Try to give a little bit at a time so that it can add up. The one thing I can say is when it comes to the principles, when people do finally write those things down, or at least sit down and think about it, they can definitely see where they had some leaks. And it's not leaks in the principles, but it's leaks in not holding themselves accountable, of following up on making sure that people, places, or things are in alignment with that. And then, especially when they learn to pause, when they learn to breathe and not react, then they're able, to do that. And so, when it comes to your mental health, your well being, it is a disservice to yourself if you do not have practices, if you do not incorporate some form of self care. Self care could be pausing, self care can be reading, some self care can be listening, self care can just be sitting, taking that breath. Because by you being an entrepreneur, by you being someone who has a calling, by have someone who has a purpose, you're purpose driven, by you not taking care of yourself, to be honest, yeah, you'll be able to play a part in your calling, but then over time, it's going to get harder and harder because you're not taking care of yourself. Right now, I'm more on the side of wellness. What are the things that you can do to try and prevent something from becoming on the clinical side? And it's okay if you need that. Some people use therapy even for the wellness part of it, and there's different reasons for that. So whatever you use is a therapist, a licensed therapist, and or you can have both, a licensed therapist or a coach, a life coach. And then when it comes to life coaching, they can specialize in so many different things. And I feel like that they're both can complement each other, and they both are needed. And so with those of you, like, hey Sharon, I'm pretty good at, you know, already have, either you already have a practice, a lifestyle practice of you taking care of yourself. That's wonderful. But sometimes, you're like, hey, I would like some tips. I want to see what is take five to thrive, take five to thrive today, what that is. And just comment thrive. But then for some of you, to be honest, most of us as humans, because we don't really have the capacity to keep up with everything for different parts of our lives, to be in community. And that's one of the reasons why I had created Fortitude Free Circle for female entrepreneurs, and especially if you are 40 plus. You don't have to be 40. You could be, younger than 40. But especially are you, getting close to 40, or you're 40 plus, then this circle is for you. Because one of the things that we do is that we help you build discipline when it comes to, some habits that you're trying to, you're trying to create. But then we also, it's a space so that you can keep up with the pace when it comes to embracing challenges, because being an entrepreneur isn't always the easiest thing. If anybody says that, ask them to really show you. And then also to sustain resilience. And we do that inside the circle on Saturdays at 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, because we need certain rituals in place to kind of help detach and release all of the stressors that come on to us inside the world. And so, again, when it comes to your mental health, it's about your well-being. What are the things that you're doing for your well-being, to be well? And The other thing I want to say too, one of the reasons that I created and even become a voice of self-care is because I pretty much have seen, I mean, and I get it why it's like this, but I've seen that there's not enough focus on wellness. And the more that you focus on wellness, the more it's going to help, and the more that you can see. Is it going to, completely prevent certain things? It may not be able to prevent, but I have seen where people, when they are focused on wellness, they truly know themselves, and it helps. It really helps. And some discussions are better in the clinical world, but right here, we're all about being well. And if you're an entrepreneur and you're like, hey, I just need to get the framework, let me get that Take Five to Thrive Today wellness boosters, comment, thrive. But if you're like, you know what, sometimes I need that nudge of reminders, or just want to be inside a circle of diverse, like-minded individuals, because you don't want your calling to overtake you. You want to make sure that you stay connected with yourself. You stay connected with yourself by nurturing your well-being and not forgetting about yourself. And that's the main thing when it comes to the circle. And continue to follow me and you'll learn more about the circle. And for, again, some of you all need it, some of you all don't, but I appreciate everyone who's listening.